What's going down, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Welcome to Why We're Fans. As you know, I'm G, and this is my cousin Duran right there.
How's it going, guys?
Today we got a special guest. We got my big brother. We got Rob Muniz. Rob, how you doing today?
Doing well, guys. How are you?
Doing good. Beer in hand, Wednesday night, can't complain. Pretty much, man, we want to know about your favorite team, and the sport today is going to be football. So we want to know why, your favorite team is your favorite team. So we got a couple questions lined up for you. Hope you're ready.
So first of all, Rob, who's your team?
My team currently is the Raiders.
The Oakland Raiders. Now,
Oakland Raiders.
Of course, we know you. We know your favorite
Vegas
team
Raiders.
now, but we understand you have a little bit of a different way of how you became a Raiders fan. So how did it all start?
Well, as you guys can tell, I'm still stuck in Oakland. So, it's been kind of tough for me to say Las Vegas. But it's not that I'm against it or anything. I get it. So it's kind of hard to break that habit for now. But yeah, my story as a fan is a little bit different. I actually grew up a 49ers fan.
Mm-hmm.
Real big 49ers fan. And some of my first memories are, I want to say back when they traded Joe Montana to the Chiefs. I remember that was a huge deal.
Yeah, I think that was the year that I was born.
Was it? Oh, man.
Yeah, I think it was 1989. Nice. That was the first year that Joe Montana ended up going over to the Chiefs. So you started off as a Niners fan. You remember the big trade, but transitioning to how you became a Raiders fan, I usually boil it down to about three things, and you might be the one that fits into this fourth one. But the first one is the location, your hometown, the team you were born around, and for you, both of these teams you were born around. A player, maybe one player that you're rooting for, kind of brought you over to that team. A family tradition, which passed down from family members from previous years. And the last one, which I don't like to mention because I feel like it's so rare, but it's kind of the lone wolf where someone sees the uniform, the colors, the reputation, the fan base, and kind of gets attracted to that type of style. Do you fit in any one of those categories?
Actually, definitely the location,
Yep.
Growing up a Niners fan, I watched a lot of the Raiders as well, just because that was the team from across the bay.
Yep.
And then on top of that, the Cowboys were a huge rivalry or a huge rival for the Niners. So,
Mm-hmm.
Especially every time they played together, I was pretty pumped on that. I still remember in 1994, the pick by Eric Davis when he stepped in front of Kevin Williams and took it to the house. That was a huge, huge game. And, they went on to win the Super Bowl that year.
Those were the golden years for me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So going back to those categories that you named, I feel like it was a family tradition growing up in a household. Parents were both Niners. And there's actually one thing I really miss about being a Niners fan is watching the games with my mom, because we would go crazy during those games.
Love it.
So time went on, and I remember the 49ers changing ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Back when Eddie DeBartolo was caught up in the mix with some gambling issues and whatnot. And Jed York, who I believe was his nephew, came in and took over. And I didn't like it. I just felt like it took the soul away from the team. DeBartolo was a huge presence without having to be the guy in the spotlight, and the reason his presence was so huge is, he spared no expense to take care of his team, and they obviously produced on the field. So I guess I just was having a hard time catching on to that change. On top of that, I still remember the hit Steve Young took when he went down, and that was pretty much it for him.
Mm-hmm.
And
Inez Williams.
Then Jeff Garcia came in and took over. And I actually was a big fan of Jeff Garcia. I thought he was pretty good. You know, everyone talked about he was too small to be quarterback. You know, later on, I found out he went to San Jose State, and so that pumped me up about him even more. And I thought he had the tools. I thought, you know, he did a good job of not listening to all that negative crap, and he just came in and performed. You know, made a couple Pro Bowls.
Yep.
But then,
Yeah,
you know, I felt like the Niners were always approaching him kind of like it was a temporary thing, you know, and so that's where I kind of started, you know, thinking about, I don't know, looking elsewhere, just because it wasn't the same team to me, you know, and I catch a lot of flack from my friends and family still to this day about making that switch. But I mean, I remember when they drafted who was it? Giovanni Carmazzi. I remember Bill Walsh being huge on him. This is the athlete of the future. This is the next big thing in the NFL. And he was out of the league pretty quick.
Yeah.
And Jeff Garcia was always battling for a spot, even though I felt like it was his team. So, I mean, he even dealt with T.O., you know, T.O., who's a Hall of Fame receiver. He's quite a personality to deal with, you know, especially for a quarterback.
So one thing that I did like about Jeff Garcia is that he was Bill Walsh's guy when they played against him while Bill Walsh was at Stanford and Garcia, like you said, was at San Jose State. There's something that sparked Bill Walsh's interest, and as you know, that Bill Walsh is the offensive genius, bought the West Coast offense from Cincinnati and kind of made it his own over here in San Francisco. You know, it was amazing, and the fact that he saw him play in Canadian League and said, "Hey, I remember this guy. You guys need him in his organization," and brought him back into the organization. And like you said, he dealt with all these adversities. Playing behind Steve Young was definitely one of them, but I felt like it was, you know, a blessing, just kind of how Aaron Rodgers now played behind Brett Favre and turned into the player he was. You know, I'm not saying Jeff Garcia is Aaron Rodgers, but kind of learning from a Hall of Fame quarterback turns you into something good.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see right here already a 4-time Pro Bowler. I don't remember.
He won 2 division titles too.
There you go. So definitely an underrated guy. But now moving a little bit forward to when you officially made that transition to the Raiders. Do you remember the first year, the first reason why? Was it a player? Was it anything you could think of that really solidified that decision?
Yeah, well, there's a gentleman by the name of Charles Woodson, who is the only defensive player in NCAA history to win a Heisman. Yep. And he actually beat out Peyton Manning. I remember that.
Got the winery.
Yeah, I mean, I watched that guy in college, and you know, there's so many reasons why he, you know, shouldn't have played football. You know, even, you know, from a kid growing up. And man, every time he was on TV, I couldn't stop watching. You know, I know Michigan has a huge following, and I was definitely a follower during those years. You know, I can't say I'm a big Blue fan, but I mean, Charles Woodson, that was my guy, and I was really excited to see where he was going to go. And yeah, when he held up that silver and black jersey, it did something to me, you know, and I took a liking to that team right away. And man, that's one of my favorite players in football history. So
perfect.
Yeah, he definitely helped me do it. And then one thing that kind of helped with that transition, the first football game I ever went to was actually a Raiders game.
Nice.
And also I had some family members around the outside who were Raider fans. So, you know, it was kind of, I don't want to call the transition easy, but it made it a little bit smoother for me, I guess you could say.
Exactly. And I think that moves perfectly into our next topic, which is who was your favorite player for the Raiders? I already had down that it was Charles Woodson. I knew that he was a big reason, and he was probably the best player on the team when you made that transition. One guy that I did want to mention alongside of Charles Woodson, which I kind of think it was like a Batman and Robin thing, was Nominee Osuma, who was both of those guys in the secondary locking up. I mean, that'd be hard to compete with today. I can't think of a better duo.
And Nominee was he was the definition of lockdown. And the only reason he didn't get much love in the beginning of his career is because nobody threw to his side. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to build up stats when nobody's throwing at you. And when teams did throw at him, they paid the price. So yeah, man, I remember Nnamdi, and I remember that was pretty heartbreaking when he left for Philadelphia and just seemed to kind of fade away after that, you know.
When you made the transition, was that Charles Woodson's rookie year? Or was it a couple years after that?
I believe he was drafted in 98. So I definitely started watching the Raiders more closely then. I'm not sure if that's when I officially switched over. It's probably a few years after that. I want to say roughly 02, 03-ish, somewhere around there. But I definitely started watching the Raiders closely at that point.
I felt like you became a 49er. You left the 49ers kind of the same time Jerry Rice left the 49ers. I'm not saying that was the reason why. Obviously, it seems like it was C. Wood. But I felt like that was kind of an easier transition for you, knowing that one of your favorite players while we were growing up, Jerry Rice, is now on the Oakland Raiders. And it was still so weird for me. You know, I love Jerry with all my heart, and seeing him end his career the way he did, whether it was in Oakland, Seattle, and Denver Broncos, it was kind of weird. But I felt like the transition was a little bit easier for you, knowing that one of your favorite players watching growing up, you're now rooting for him. So I felt like when Jerry left, you left. I'm not saying that was the reason why, but that's what I always thought.
Yeah. You know, that's actually a good point you make right there, because I mean, Jerry's the GOAT. You know what I mean? Nobody worked as hard as that guy did. Nobody paid as much attention to detail. And you know, he had his own way. He had his own routine about the way he approached the game, you know, approached practice. You know, socks had to be a certain way, gloves had to be a certain way, wristbands, you know, he was efficient. And and you're right, it did make it a lot easier to make that transition when he left, especially since the Niners were doing everything they could to get him to retire. They offered him, I believe it was $1 million to retire and not play for anyone else. And he's too competitive for that. You know, he wanted to wait until the team said he could not play anymore. And I mean, yeah, how do you get mad at that? He just wanted to compete. He played in a Super Bowl. Unfortunately, they didn't win it that year, but he was still performing at a high level.
Performed at a high level every year. He played 16 games, 19 out of 20 years. So I don't know what happened that one year in the middle of his career, but yeah, consistent every year, never got injured, and yeah, living legend.
So actually, speaking of the gap, one of my worst memories as a Niner fan was the first time Jerry Rice ever missed a game. He got that knee injury, I believe playing against Tampa, and he tried to get up and kind of jog it off and run, and it was just it wasn't there. And I just remember being speechless. Like, that's the Iron Man right there. You know what I mean? That's Jerry. That's the GOAT. And for him not to be able to play because he was hurt, like physically unable, I couldn't make that connection. So that's definitely one of my worst memories as a Niner fan is Jerry having to go on the injured list.
We might get into a couple more bad memories, unfortunately, in a little bit. But I had one more question just about your favorite player, Charles Woodson. You might be a little bit biased, but is he a Green Bay Packer or is he an Oakland Raider?
Oof.
What do you consider him as?
I consider him an Oakland Raider.
Of course.
To me, I mean, I feel like he brought a strong sense of leadership to Green Bay. And I mean, I'm not a Green Bay fan, but I watched him all the way through Green Bay, and I watched him set the tone for that defense. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? He broke his collarbone in the Super Bowl, and he was still right there with his defense, you know, arm in a sling, you know what I'm saying? Still doing his thing, still making his presence felt. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where he really stepped on the gas as far as, you know, taking a team over and knowing what they had to do and where they had to go. But I feel like he's one of the players that's heart and soul of the Raiders, you know, and if I mean, especially when he came back, that was so huge. Yep. And they've made a couple adjustments on defense since then, but man, he brought that team together and they all rallied around him. You always knew when Charles Woodson was on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, I was going to mention that he always came back home and that's where he ended his career. So I think that's where his heart was the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got any more questions about favorite player?
Not about favorite player, but I do want to know your favorite coach for the Raiders.
My favorite coach for the Raiders. It's pretty hard to like anyone. I mean, Al Davis is the legendary coach, but I mean, I was obviously too young. I'm glad to say that to see him in his coaching days. I saw him mainly as an owner, but I know his approach as a coach is legendary. I mean, all over the league, not just with the Raiders organization. Yeah. But I mean, I gotta say it's Gruden. As crappy as it was to see him on the other side, Tampa, I don't feel like he had any control of that trade. You know what I mean? They sort of shipped him out. So, I mean, I can't go against Gruden. He's one of the smartest football minds still in this game today. So.
Yeah, I don't think you have another choice other than Gruden. I mean, you're definitely too young for John Madden. We know him more as a commentator, the video game face, but John Gruden, he's back for another 10-year stint. So we'll see how that goes. Do you have a worst coach? I have one listed here just because I have a couple memories, but I want to know if you have one.
A worst coach. That's a tough one. What do you got listed?
The one I'm thinking of is Lane Kiffin when he got fired. I don't know. Of course, you remember he brought on Janikowski to attempt like a 75-yard field goal, something ridiculous like that. He got fired the next day. And then Al Davis, it came out later on, and there's actually footage on YouTube now that he put together a whole presentation of why Lane Kiffin was a bad coach and pretty much showed it to the team the next day.
One thing that I do love
classic Al Davis.
One thing I do love about Lane, though, is that he hammered home to draft Calvin Johnson, but they wanted to draft Marcus Russell.
Yeah, he was in a tough spot. I don't think he was the type of coach that can make decisions like that. When you got a guy like Al Davis who really prided himself in scouting, coaching, and things like that, he had final say.
Yeah, it's funny because before you mentioned all that, I was going to say Dennis Allen, just because he was supposed to be the defensive genius. He was going to bring in and set the tone. I don't feel like we felt his presence ever really, you know what I mean? So to see him go, I felt like that was a step in the right direction. But Lane Kiffin, yeah, man, that's crazy. I still remember, Al Davis going on and making an entire speech on, why he was not a good fit. And Lane, I understood his fiery attitude and stuff like that, but I never really caught on to Lane's style. I guess I just never really was a huge fan of his. I felt like he liked the cameras more than actually, getting in touch with his team. But again, that's from the outside looking in. I don't know what it was like in that locker room.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say it was either him or Tony Sperano or Tom Cable even.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Cable, especially, I wouldn't get mad at that. He was kind of thrown in that position, and he's not afraid to call guys out. He's on the staff now, and I think that's for good reason. Gruden doesn't hire, any kind of scrubs. He obviously saw some value, sees some value in Cable. So, I mean, I think Cable was put in a really tough situation, and he did the best he could with what he had, and still was able to keep credibility, even if they didn't, achieve, anything crazy. So I can't hate on Cable.
Yeah. Enough about the bad stuff. Let's move on to a little bit more of a bright spot. Do you have a first memory of the Raiders? It could be from uniforms to players, a classic play or a game, a Super Bowl appearance. Can you think of anything like that?
I want to say their fan base was real big for me. You know, it's like, yeah, when I was a kid and being a Niners fan, and you talk to other Raiders fans, you guys are jawing back and forth and talking a lot of crap, which is always fun, still fun today. But I mean, that fan base, you know, the silver and black, and
Yep.
I just had always noticed that
The black hole.
even in away games, they had a huge cheering section. And listening, I used to love to talk to older people about, you know, the Raiders back in the day and when they used to practice in Sonoma County, and they would be, I mean, you can't do this nowadays, but they'd be out and about on the town and they would be interacting with their fan base, you know, and I think that just really built up a huge loyalty, a huge following. So I got to say the fan base is really what I took notice of. You know, it's kind of hard to look away from that.
The fan base, the reputation. I mean, it's undeniable. It's probably one of the best in the game.
Yeah,
Good one.
without a doubt.
Yeah, it's real good.
Do you have a favorite memory going through? It could be, again, Super Bowls, a draft pick, a comeback, a specific play, or even like a game that you attended in person. Can you think of anything like that?
You know, it's crazy. You would think it'd be like Charles Woodson's first pick or even when he got drafted, but I actually remembered everybody making a big deal, and everybody, meaning the press, made a big deal when Al Davis drafted Sebastian Janikowski in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was just a kicker. Why are you going to, you know, draft a kicker in the first round? And he had his struggles, you know, but I mean, man, nobody ever seen a leg as powerful as that. And I remember watching him at Florida State and thinking like, yeah, this guy's definitely going to the next league. I don't feel like you can really look at a kicker and know just right away they're going to the league. But I feel like that guy, you can pretty much tell. Would I have drafted a kicker in the first round? I don't know. You know, I've never been in that situation, but that definitely stands out to me as they drafted a kicker and everybody lost it. You know what I mean? Oh my God, how could he do this? And you know, Al Davis did what he wanted. He had a vision. He stuck to it. He, you know.
Technically, you have been in that situation in fantasy football. You can always draft the kicker first round.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
So Janikowski was there for 17 straight years. Yeah. So even though at the beginning, and you looking back on it, might not have been the best decision, but he was consistent. He was known to have a huge leg. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he was in the top in all-time scoring for you guys. So Sebastian Janikowski.
Wasn't he picked with a trade that you guys gave to Tampa Bay?
I'm not sure.
I'm almost.
I can't say that specifically without looking into it first.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
I'll have my
one thing I will piggyback on top of that though was the first game I went to. I mentioned it was a Raiders game. It was against the Chargers, and Janikowski kicked the winning field goal in overtime to beat him. So it was cool celebrating with those fans. You know, I had been to football parties and stuff like that, but I'd never been in the stands like cheering with a bunch of people. And it's so crazy how all these complete strangers I mean, you guys become family right when the kickoff starts, and it was a great time. You know, I'm not sure when we'll be able to do anything like that again, but you know, that was pretty awesome.
Funny you say that. My first game that I remember going to is Raiders versus Chargers, the same thing. And the reason I wanted to go to that, I was wearing Raiders gear, but I was cheering for LaDainian Tomlinson the whole game, and he did score in front of me. So that's the very first game I ever went to with my dad.
Nice.
Chargers,
nice. LT, man, what a player that it's crazy when you look at all the running backs now catching passes out of the league. I remember when he did that, it was like such a rarity, and he was a very special player.
Even through passes. Don't forget.
Man, yeah, you're right.
He touchdown streak for a second. So
there you go.
Jumping from that, do you have a worst memory? I mean, it could be, we were looking through a couple of the Raiders stuff today. It could be the Jamarcus Russell pick. It could be losing the Super Bowl to Gruden. I know that was a painful one. The Tuck rule. I mean, yeah, I think as a Raiders fan, and a lot of fan bases could relate that with all the ups, there's also the downs.
Yeah, I mean, if I were a Raider fan and I love C Wood, I think the Tuck role might be your worst.
It's something that
Yeah.
they show every year.
Yeah, I mean,
stop.
so touching on the Super Bowl, I can't say that was the worst memory. I mean, it's not like it was a heartbreaker. It was, I mean, John Gruden went as far as playing Rich Gannon in practice and calling out the cadence, and he was ready for everything. That was his team that he built, and then he was playing against them. So when they just came out and dominated it, I can't say it sucked, but I can't say it was heartbreaking. But Jamarcus Russell, that is up there definitely because I was so big on him in college, and I was looking forward to seeing him grow as a player. But that was that. The Tuck rule definitely still haunts me to this day. I mean, Charles Woodson made the hit of the century, and I still can't get. I mean, I've watched it a million times, and I still can't make the connection on how that was not a fumble. You know what I mean?
The worst part is they go back the next year and then reverse the call. That would have made it. It just, that was a disaster. And Jamarcus Russell is one of the many examples of why I kind of don't scout quarterbacks, because I feel like it's way more of a mental position. You could have all the arm talent, all of the talent in the world, but once you get in that quarterback room and once you start reading defenses, it's a whole nother game that, as someone scouting players and looking at players, you'll never know.
Absolutely. No, that's right on the head. And I mean, as everyone says that has experienced it, I mean, the NFL is a whole different speed.
Yep.
You know, everyone's the man when they're coming into the league from, coming from wherever they came from. But I mean, the NFL is a whole nother speed. There's a reason why. That's why I don't get mad when these players over celebrate, is because it's hard. It's hard to win a game in this league. And I mean, the guys are getting faster and stronger still to this day. So.
Yep. Moving on to our last section, which is kind of the future expectations that you have for the Raiders. I mean, coming up in the next draft, you guys have 3 top 100 picks. You don't have a 4th round pick, and you've kind of ran out of those Khalil Mack picks. So you guys have a nice, solid, young foundation. So is there any position of need or of want that you could think of at this moment?
Man, I knew Khalil was going to come up in this talk at some point. That's my guy right there. I just love the way he plays. He's the definition of relentless. But as far as expectations go, I can't say I have any set expectations. I mean, I'll use the Jamarcus Russell as an example. The drafting of him. I expected so many things out of him and was definitely let down. So I can't really say I have expectations going up. What I would like to see is a dominant force on the D-line. I think we have some good young athletes on the D-line, but I would like to see a dominating force. I think that quarterbacks they just have too much time to throw back there. And for our young secondary, it makes it a lot harder when you have to guard some of these elite receivers for 10 seconds. You know what I mean? So I think it all starts on the line on both sides, offense and defense. I think we have a pretty solid offensive line, and then Josh Jacobs, he's the bat. I mean, he's the future. You know what I mean? If he's not number 1 in the league, I mean, I think he's the number 1 running back in the league. So I think we need to be able to shut some offenses down, but we can't do that if the line is getting pushed around.
Yeah. I totally feel that. And luckily for you guys, you're not losing many guys next year. The couple guys that stand out a little bit to me are Nelson Aguilar, Jonathan Hankins, and of course Witten. But out of those guys, Aguilar has actually stepped it up for you guys, and I don't think would be bad if you brought him back. It seems like this is the most productive he's ever been. And I mean, most of your starters are under 30. He's played decent for you guys. I think that'd be step in the right direction.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
guys
I go ahead.
you guys are currently picking in like the late teens as well, and I know you wanted some D linemen. Uh, are you focusing more on the edge or interior?
There's anywhere we can get a push, man. I don't. I mean, I like to say get a good DN, but then if you're doubling that guy, you know, then what are you gonna do? I don't know. I can't say. I would just like to see a force, someone that obviously stands out. I'd like to start from the inside and work out, but again, that goes into expectations and can't really set too many expectations, especially these days. With the injuries so high, and it's a sad thing to see some of these players coming. I mean, I like the idea of practice squad players getting their opportunities, but man, just to get thrown in there with the Wolves, that's going to end anyone's career right off the bat. You know what I mean? I know some guys are an exception, but it's been a tough year for injuries.
So with I'm reading a whole bunch of stuff on Twitter saying that Carr is either part of the future or you guys want to try to ship him off and get draft picks. You personally, I want your take on Carr. I want you, kind of explain, what's going on. I liked him coming out of Fresno State. I think I had him as one of my top guys. Actually, me as a 49er fan, I had him over Garoppolo coming out in the draft. Where do you see him? Do you see him in the future? Do you see him, being a long time or what?
It's hard to say. I have mixed feelings on D Carr. I mean, I love the guy. I love him. He's a great person. Definitely watched him in college and coming up, super pumped when he became a Raider, and just to see him, dive right into the mix and, take control of that offense. That was a beautiful thing. I also remember my wife and I were at the game when he broke his ankle, and man, you've never seen such a crowded stadium so quiet. Everyone just hands on their heads, and that was a sad time, So I think he had a little bit of a struggle coming back from that, and totally understandable. I mean, you got guys trying to take your head off every time you drop back, and coming back from an injury is a whole nother mental game, So I knew it might take a little bit of time for him to come back. But he definitely has had his struggles. I think he lost a little bit of his fire. I still remember him running for the first down, popping up and boom, showing that first down and flexing and putting it on in front of the crowd. I think he lost a little bit of that just because he was probably more focused on the injury, or anyway, that was my initial thought. But seeing him progress the way he has since Gruden has got there, I think he has really set the ego aside and has allowed Gruden to mold him, if you will. And for someone that's a veteran like that in the league, especially if you've had success in the past, really, really hard to set that ego aside and allow a coach just to kind of reinvent your playing style. I think he does a better job of throwing the ball away now. He makes smarter decisions, but he still overthrows the ball a lot. We got some fast guys, and they're pretty hard to overthrow, and he still sails it a little bit, or he might put a little bit too much touch on it, and the ball goes straight up in the air, and might end up an interception or something. So I will give him credit. I know that's an incredibly difficult thing to do, especially at that point in your career, to allow a coach to kind of take the reins, if you will. I can't say for sure if that's what's happening without knowing the behind the scenes, but just from the outside looking in as a fan, I feel like he's become a much smarter player, much more efficient. But I'm not sure. I can't say what the future holds. I'd like to see him continue to progress, but it's hard when everything is so hot and cold. They look like a contender one week, and the next they're struggling to play against the Jets. So I know injuries might have a lot to do with that as well, but it's kind of hard with so many peaks and valleys.
I feel ya. Well, I got one more question. G, you got anything else?
No, I mean, honestly, I just got mainly props for the Raiders. They're doing it with a they're doing it with a lot of the time without their starting O-line. And most of the years when I watched Carr, he looked very, very uncomfortable behind that line. And seeing him progress, like you were saying, the way he is now, escaping, the pocket when it starts collapsing and trying to extend it is something that I've always liked. It's something that, I like to see in quarterbacks, especially nowadays, because I guess the pocket passer is kind of disappearing. So seeing someone that's an athlete like himself, which I think he's still very underrated as an athlete. I like to, I definitely like Derek Carr as a quarterback. But personally, in my opinion, I would like to see him play elsewhere. Or if you guys are going to bring in a quarterback, you guys got to bring in like one of these top quarterbacks that come in the draft now, especially now. Because I like to see him compete. I mean, I thought Mariota might have done it, but Mariota just is the Mariota that we saw in his last years in Tennessee. So I just, when it comes to Derek Carr, I just want him to feel a little bit more comfortability behind that line, because that line is actually pretty stout. So,
Yeah, I like the O-line. I think the O-line
that's the strength.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the strength. As much as I've said, like, Derek has had his struggles, it's still hard for me to say, like, yeah, he should be playing somewhere else. If anything, I'd like to bring in someone with a little bit of fire to create that competition in practice. I still think he has the ability. I still think he's a smart enough player to be able to improve, so he still has some room for growth there, especially with the mental attitude that he brings now. But yeah, I can't say that I want to see him go somewhere else just yet.
So what I'm hearing is that you guys want to bring in Fitzmagic.
No. No, if Derek was a rookie, maybe, but he's no rookie.
The draft were tomorrow. In the first round, I wouldn't draft the quarterback for you guys. You guys are picking in the late teens, probably 18, 19 range as of right now. So the draft were tomorrow. Did a quick little mock draft as we were talking, and I actually landed you guys one of the top edge rushers from Miami, Greg Rousseau. He opted out this year, but man, this kid's a stud. I mean, I feel he's better than Clinton Farrell, and when you can definitely have that healthy rotation from that line like you wanted. Even on third down, you can kick Crosby inside and have Rousseau and Farrell on the outside rushing in, and that just makes you guys more dynamic right there. And even blitz your guys. Honestly, you can use Abram as the Seahawks use Adams and rush on the outside. I think that would make you guys' defense that much more dynamic. And I know you guys' defensive coordinator was actually one of the best when he was at Cincinnati. So, I think adding an edge rusher, like you were saying, might be the key. He's no Khalil Mack, but he's definitely up there. He's definitely a beast.
Yeah, well, I mean, I will say, the D-line is definitely a need. We need somebody there with that's going to be a force to put a little bit of pressure on the quarterback. But to get into prospects and future draft picks, that's going to be a whole different conversation, because I won't even jump into that without first taking a look at some of the names there. I can't say that I've really looked that far ahead as far as draft day goes yet.
You got it. Is that it from you, G? I want to end it with one question.
Yeah, go ahead, man. Let's catch this one.
I just want to know if, Rob, do you plan on visiting the new stadium once it opens? Because I was pretty heartbroken with LA, Las Vegas, and these stadiums not being able to have fans this year.
Yeah, I would definitely like to see it. It's a beautiful stadium on TV. It's the new home of the Raiders, whether I like it or not. Not to say that I hate it. It's just, I'm still not used to it. I still say Oakland, but it's definitely an upgrade from the legendary Coliseum. A little bit of a different vibe. But yeah, I would definitely like to see. There's more than a few stadiums I'd like to see.
Yep.
So.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. That's it for me.
Yeah, that's it, man. One thing I'm just curious, when you go to the new stadium, I wonder where the black hole is going to be.
They'll have it labeled.
Why are you curious about that?
Just because, I'm just curious if it's going to be underneath the flame where they have for Al Davis, which I thought was going to be real fire, but it's not. But I'm just curious about that, just because. I mean, if I go visit that stadium, I want to be away from the black hole because there's no way I'm going to be caught in black over there.
I'll just hang on to the fact that you really want to visit, and I'll be happy with that.
There you go. All right, man. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Have a good night.